On Thanksgiving Day, my daughter handed me a card and insisted I read it out loud. I'm thankful for the sun above, I'm thankful for your love. My voice faltered as the next line stabbed through me like shards of glass. You're a heavy burden. No one wants you here. The room erupted in laughter. They were laughing at me. My name is Marion. I'm 73 years old, and that was the most painful humiliation I've ever endured. It was a bright Thursday afternoon, sunlight pouring through the windows in the room when I arrived at my daughter Lauren's home to celebrate the day. I wore my favorite maroon velvet dress, the one that always made me feel graceful, despite the years. I brought fresh flowers and a box of pastries for my grandchildren, my arms full of love. Grandma Marion, the little one squealed, racing toward me. Their hugs warmed me in a way nothing else could. For a brief, perfect moment, I felt seen and loved. Thomas, my son-in-law, barely looked up from his coffee. He greeted me with nothing more than a stiff nod. Lauren emerged from the kitchen wearing a smile that felt as thin as paper. Mom, I'm so glad you made it. We have a special surprise for you. I smiled back, unaware that what she called a surprise would shatter something deep inside me. I sat on the sofa, surrounded by what was supposed to be my family, my world. The grandchildren clustered at my feet, their eyes wide with curiosity. Lauren reached into her purse, pulled out a pink card, and handed it to me. It's from all of us, Mom. Read it out loud so everyone can hear. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. The cover was covered with childish flower drawings. How sweet, I thought, my heart already swelling. I began to read in my best cheerful voice, wanting to make the moment special. I'm thankful for the sun above, I'm thankful for your love. I stopped. My voice broke as the next lines hit me with the cruelty of a slap. You're a heavy burden. No one wants you here. Your time has passed. It's time for you to go. From your family who can't stand you anymore. For 3 endless seconds, silence filled the room. Then came the laughter. Harsh, cold laughter. Thomas's mocking chuckle echoed like a cruel joke. Lauren covered her mouth, pretending to hide her laughter, but her eyes betrayed her. Even the children began giggling, copying the adults without understanding why. Did you see your face, Mom? Lauren gasped between fits of laughter. Thomas, did you record it? That was priceless. Something inside me cracked. My heart splintered like fragile glass. Tears rolled down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. The card slipped from my shaking hands and fluttered to the floor. It's just a joke, Mom, Lauren said, her voice flat and unapologetic. Don't take it so seriously. You've always been so dramatic. Thomas bent down to pick up the card. Yeah, Marion, we were just teasing you, he added awkwardly. But maybe you should think about, other options. Other options? I asked softly, my voice trembling. Lauren sat down across from me, crossing her arms. Well, there are some wonderful senior living communities, Mom. Places where people your age can be around friends, with proper care. You'd be more comfortable there. Her words rang in my head like a death sentence. Senior living. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, wanted to cast me away like I was an old, broken piece of furniture. But I whispered, my throat closing. I thought I was coming to celebrate the Thanksgiving Day with you. And you are, Mom, Thomas said, his tone dripping with condescension. But let's be realistic. You're not getting younger. You need help, and we have our own lives to live. The children looked confused. The oldest, barely 8, came over and took my hand. Grandma, why are you crying? He asked softly. Before I could answer, Lauren pulled him back. Come here, honey. Grandma's fine, she's just being emotional again. I sat there, surrounded by the people I loved most, and yet I had never felt so completely alone. On the very day meant to honors and thanks, mine had turned into an act of cruelty. My own daughter had made me the punchline of her family's laughter. My legs trembled as I stood. "I think I should go," I managed to say. "Okay, Mom," Lauren replied casually without even getting up. "We'll call you later." I walked out the door, trying to hold on to what little dignity I had left. But inside, everything was shattered. That night, alone in my quiet house, I cried until my tears ran dry. Yet somewhere in that flood of pain, something inside me awakened, a quiet, steady flame that had been buried for years. It was time, I realized, for my family to remember who Marion truly was. The next morning, I blocked every one of them. But before closing that chapter, I sat down in my old armchair, the same one where I had once nursed baby Lauren 45 years ago, and let my memories wash over me like an old film. I was 29 when it all began. Lauren's father left us when she was only 3. One morning, he was just gone. On the kitchen table lay a note that simply said, "I can't do this life. I'm sorry." He didn't even say goodbye to his daughter. That night, I held Lauren as she sobbed, her tiny voice breaking my heart. "Where's Daddy?" she kept asking. "Daddy had to go far away, my love," I whispered, stroking her hair. That night I made myself a promise, that she would never go without anything she needed. And I kept that promise. For 15 years, I worked double shifts at the textile mill. My hands grew rough and calloused from sewing uniforms late into the night. Every penny I could spare went into a jar labeled Lauren's future. When she turned 17 and told me she wanted to study nursing, I sold my mother's jewelry, the only thing of real value I owned. "Mommy, are you sure?" she asked me, worried. "My love," I told her, "your education is everything." During her 5 years of college, I worked weekends cleaning offices, my back aching so badly I could barely stand some nights. But seeing her studying at the dining table made it all worth it. When graduation day came, I cried tears of pride as she hugged me. "We did it, Mommy," she said. "I couldn't have done it without you." Later, she met Thomas. At first, I liked him. He was polite, hardworking, and he seemed to adore her. When they got married, I paid for half of the wedding, $10,000, I had spent years saving. "Mom, that's too much," she told me. "Nonsense," I smiled. "It's the most important day of your life. You deserve it." When they bought their first home, I gave them the down payment, $24,000. It was everything I had, but seeing their happiness made me feel rich. Then came the grandchildren, 2 beautiful little souls who brought color back into my world. When Lauren returned to work, I became their caretaker. Every morning for 3 years, I walked 6 blocks before dawn. The streets were quiet, the air cold against my skin. But I had to be there by 6, not because anyone thanked me, but because it was my duty. I had to make their breakfast, dressed them, took them to the park, fed them, bathed them, and read them stories until their eyes fluttered shut. When Lauren came home from work, the house sparkled, and her children were smiling. "I don't know what we'd do without you, Mom," Lauren used to say. "You're an angel." But slowly, that gratitude began to fade. The thank yous disappeared. My advice about the children became interference. When I suggested taking the little one to the doctor for his cough, Thomas cut me off sharply. "Marion, we're the parents here." When first time it happened, I stayed silent, convincing myself I had overstepped. Then came the little jabs. "Mom, you don't have the energy you used to." "Marion, you mixed up the kids' vitamins again, maybe you need to rest more." Still, I kept showing up. I kept giving. When Thomas lost his job 2 years ago, I started sending them $500 a month to help with the mortgage. Just until he finds something, they promised. But even when he did, the money kept being accepted without a word of thanks. When the kids needed new laptops for school, I paid $2,000. When Lauren's car broke down, I gave them $5,000 for repairs. When they decided to remodel their kitchen, I offered $10,000. Little by little, I became their silent savior, the invisible backbone holding their lives together, yet no longer part of their family in any real way. About a year ago, Lauren planned a family dinner for Thomas's birthday. I only discovered it by accident when one of my grandkids let it slip during a phone call. We had a secret party for Daddy, they said innocently. My heart skipped a beat. A secret party? I asked, forcing a smile even though my voice trembled. Later that day, I called Lauren. Why didn't you tell me, dear? Why wasn't I invited? I asked as gently as I could. She sighed, almost impatiently. Oh, Mom, it was nothing big, just a tiny gathering, the four of us. You'd have been bored, really. But I saw the photos later. They were everywhere on social media. 20 people filled their living room, Thomas's family, friends, even neighbors. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. That night, I sat in my quiet house staring at those smiling faces on the screen. My eyes burned, and my throat tightened. I cried silently, convincing myself it had been an innocent mistake, a simple oversight. But oversights soon became habits. They forgot to call on my birthday. They canceled our lunch plans at the last minute. And when I stopped by unannounced, they greeted me with the kind of discomfort you reserve for an unwanted guest. 3 months ago, came the final straw. One evening, I was helping Lauren with dinner when I overheard Thomas's voice from the patio. He was talking on the phone, his tone casual, detached. Yeah, my mother-in-law still lives alone, he said. She's getting really dependent. No, she's not sick, but you know how they are at that age. We're looking into some options, maybe move her somewhere proper. I froze. The words hit me like a cold wind. My own son-in-law was discussing plans to send me away like some piece of outdated furniture. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of my life that I had devoted to them. All the years, the sacrifices, the money, the love, and now I was nothing but an inconvenience. They didn't know, though. They had no idea who I really was or what I still had. Before my mother passed away, she had told me about a family property in St. Thomas, in the USVI, a beachfront condo that became mine when I turned 70. It had been rented for decades, the income quietly accumulating in an untouched account. I had also inherited a fortune from my late Aunt Ruth. She had never married and left me her savings, her investments, her bonds. I invested them carefully over the years. Between those accounts, certificates, and stocks, I had nearly $300,000 sitting in my name. My family thought I was a frail old woman scraping by on Social Security. They never guessed that I had been quietly paying for their comfort all along, not because I had to, but because I loved them. But after that cruel day, something inside me shattered. That card, those words, became the spark that changed everything. You're a heavy burden. No one wants you here. They had meant to hurt me, but those words awakened something fierce and alive inside me. I sat up through the night, holding that card in my trembling hands. At first, the pain felt unbearable. But as the hours passed, my tears dried, replaced by something stronger. Clarity. Resolve. I began to see things as they truly were for the first time in decades. I wasn't a burden. I was their pillar, the one who had held them up while they took my kindness for granted. I rose from my chair and went to my bedroom. From my dresser, I pulled out a small wooden box I hadn't opened in months. Inside were all my documents, bank statements, deeds, investment papers, inheritance records. I spread them across the table and began adding everything up, my heart pounding with every figure. Over the last 5 years, I had given Lauren and Thomas exactly $68,000. $68,000. Given freely. Unquestioned. Unreturned. The down payment for their home, $24,000. The wedding, $10,000. Monthly help for 2 years, another $12,000. $2,000 for the kids' computers, $5,000 for the car repairs, $10,000 for the kitchen remodel, and at least $5,000 more in uncounted little favors. I had given and given while living modestly in my small house, wearing the same maroon dress I'd worn for years, walking to the store to save gas. But it wasn't the money that hurt. It was the memory of how their warmth toward me had changed. I remembered my oldest grandson's birthday, just 6 months ago. I had arrived early, as always, to help decorate. When I knocked, Thomas opened the door, frowning. "Marion, the party doesn't start until 3. Why are you so early?" "I thought I could help with the preparations," I said with a hopeful smile. "We've got it covered," he said curtly. "Lauren's mother is already helping." Behind him, I saw Brenda, his mother, stringing balloons and chatting happily in the living room. My heart sank. She had been invited to help, while I was made to feel like an intruder. "I can wait outside until 3, I whispered. "Don't be so dramatic, Mom," Lauren said, stepping out of the kitchen, drying her hands on an apron. "You can stay, but please don't get in the kitchen. You know you always get confused with recipes." Confused with recipes. Me, the woman who had cooked for them for decades. That day, I sat in a corner of the patio, invisible, while Brenda basked in the attention. Guests complimented her on the cake she'd baked, one I had paid for. When they sang "Happy Birthday," I stayed in the back, smiling through tears. No one noticed I wasn't in the family photos. Later, as I was quietly collecting dirty plates, my grandson came over. "Grandma, why were you so quiet today?" he asked sweetly. "I'm just tired, my love," I said, forcing a smile. "Grandma Brenda says you're too old for big parties," he said innocently. His words pierced through me. Brenda, who was only 3 years younger than me, was poisoning my grandchildren's minds. But even after that, I kept giving. I kept hoping things would somehow go back to the way they were. How naive I was. Then came Christmas. I spent nearly $3,000 on gifts that year. A shiny red bicycle for my oldest grandson, a tablet for the youngest, a bottle of French perfume for Lauren, and a power tool set for Thomas, something he'd once mentioned wanting. I arrived on Christmas Eve carrying the heavy bags, my arms aching but my heart light. The children ran toward me, their faces full of joy. "Kids, put Grandma's presents under the tree with the others," Lauren said quickly. "We'll open them all together tomorrow." My gifts disappeared beneath a mountain of packages they'd bought for themselves. When the time came to open them, no one kept track of who gave what. The children's thanks were general, directed at the room, not at me. Then came the moment that broke me in a quiet, final way. I handed Lauren a small velvet box. Inside was the pearl necklace that had belonged to my grandmother, a family treasure passed down through generations of women. I had imagined her eyes lighting up, imagined her wearing it proudly someday. Instead, she barely glanced inside. "It's really pretty, Mom," she said flatly. "But I don't wear much jewelry. Maybe save it for the girls when they're older." She handed it back as if it meant nothing. That night, I sat in my bedroom, holding the little box against my chest, sobbing. The pearls were cold, smooth, and heavy in my hands, like the weight of all my unappreciated love. It wasn't their value that hurt. It was her indifference. 2 months later, I fell ill with the flu. My fever climbed above 102. I could barely stand. I called Lauren, my voice weak. "Honey, could you bring me some soup or check on me?" I asked. "Mom, we're swamped," she replied briskly. "Thomas has got a big project, and I'm doing double shifts. Can't you ask a neighbor?" "But I can barely walk," I pleaded. "Mom, you're not a child. You need to learn to take care of yourself. We can't drop everything every time you catch a cold." A cold. I lay in bed, shaking, for days. She never called again. It was my 82-year-old neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, who brought me homemade soup and sat by my bedside until my fever broke. A woman I barely knew showed me more kindness than my own daughter. When I finally recovered and went back to my family, no one even asked how I was feeling. It was as if that week of sickness had never existed. And as I sat at my dining table, surrounded by my bank papers and memories, I finally understood with painful, absolute clarity, in their lives, I wasn't family anymore. I was a convenience, until I wasn't. I realized then that I had never truly been the cherished grandmother, only the convenient solution to everyone else's needs. When there was a bill to pay, they called me. When they needed a babysitter or someone to blame for a bad day, I was always available. Marion, the ever-giving, ever-patient Marion. But when Marion needed warmth, understanding, or even a simple call during an illness, Marion disappeared from their world. I was invisible unless they needed something. That night, the truth hit me like a tidal wave, and I made the hardest, yet clearest decision of my life. I opened my old laptop, its screen flickering softly in the dark room, and logged into my bank account for the first time in months. I stared at the numbers that represented years of sacrifice and love, then began to make changes, final, irreversible changes. The automatic $500 transfer to Lauren's account? Cancelled. The joint emergency savings account that only ever seemed to serve their emergencies? Closed. And then, my will, the one I had written years ago with so much trust and affection, I rewrote it completely in my mind that night. Everything I had once set aside for Lauren and Thomas would now go to a foundation that truly understood loneliness, the foundation for abandoned seniors. And finally, with trembling hands but a steady heart, I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I bought a plane ticket. St. Thomas. The place I had inherited but never seen. My new beginning waited by the sea. The next morning, I woke up with a purpose that felt unfamiliar but exhilarating. Sleep had barely touched me, but I was more awake than I had been in years. I chose my best gray suit, the one I had worn to Lauren's graduation, now a little old-fashioned but elegant. I fixed my hair into a neat bun, touched my cheeks with a faint blush, and looked in the mirror. Gone was the tired old woman they pitted. In her place stood a woman of dignity, strength, and clarity. The woman I had always been but forgotten to show. My first stop was the bank. Mr. Parker, my financial advisor, looked startled to see me walk in so early. "Mrs. Marion, what brings you in today?" he asked politely. "I need to make a few important changes," I said, my voice firm. For the next 2 hours, I carefully restructured my entire financial world. Every automatic transfer to Lauren's account, terminated. The joint account, closed. I consolidated my investments, transferring funds where only I could access them. Mr. Parker adjusted his glasses, frowning with concern. "Are you absolutely certain, ma'am? These are rather significant steps." "I am completely sure," I replied without hesitation. "It's my money, and it's time it served my life, not others' expectations." From there, I went straight to Mr. Caldwell's office, my lawyer for nearly 3 decades. He had watched Lauren grow from a toddler to a mother herself. When I walked into his office, he rose from his chair, his expression filled with curiosity and worry. "Marion, my dear, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said. "For the first time in a long time, everything is exactly right. I need to change my will." He looked at me with deep concern. "Marion, this is quite a drastic move." "Are you sure?" "I've never been more certain of anything." I explained every detail, how my estate would now go to a charity for homeless seniors, how my grandchildren would still have a trust waiting for them, but only when they turned 25 and only if they maintained genuine, loving contact with me. "No more pretenses," I told him. "Only truth." He sighed and said softly, "You've thought about this deeply, haven't you?" "For 74 years, I answered, signing the papers with a steady hand. "And in the last 5, I've learned everything I needed to know." Leaving his office, I felt a weight lift from my chest. My next stop was the travel agency. I had spent the night researching my property in St. Thomas, a beautiful 3-bedroom condo overlooking turquoise water, managed by a company that had kept it pristine while the rental income quietly grew untouched. The woman behind the counter smiled as she asked, "Is this a vacation, ma'am?" "No," I said with a small laugh. "It's a liberation trip." I bought a first-class ticket. If I was going to begin again, I would do so with grace and style, my own kind of grace. When I got home, the sunlight was spilling across my dining table. I sat down with a calm heart and pulled out my favorite stationery, cream-colored, elegant, the kind I had saved for special letters I never wrote. Now it was time. I took a deep breath and began writing. My dearest Lauren, by the time you read this, I'll be on my way to St. Thomas, to a home you never knew existed. I've decided to end all financial support, the $500 monthly transfer is canceled, and our joint account is closed. Please don't see this as punishment but as a lesson in independence I should have taught you long ago. For decades, I gave you everything, time, energy, money, and love. But somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as your servant. The Thanksgiving Day card was simply the final blow. I have rewritten my will. My inheritance will go to those who understand love without expecting a reward. Your children will still have a chance at their share, but only when they're mature enough to value real connection, not convenience. Don't come looking for money or pity. If you want your mother back, show me love, not need. With a heart finally free, your mother, Marion. Then came the second letter. Thomas, I once saw you as the son I never had. I accepted you, helped you, and supported your dreams. But you turned me into the mother-in-law you wished didn't exist. I heard your call 3 months ago, the one where you spoke of finding a proper place for me, like I was an unwanted piece of furniture. What you didn't know was that I already had a proper place. I have property, investments, and freedom beyond anything you imagined. I was never dependent, I simply chose love over pride. But that love was met with disdain. You mistook my kindness for weakness, my care for interference. Now, you will see the difference. You'll stand on your own without my quiet help. When both letters were sealed, I placed them on my coffee table where they would be found. Then I sat back in my armchair, the afternoon sun warming my hands. For the first time, I smiled not out of politeness, but from deep within. It had taken 74 long years, but I had finally understood the truth life had been whispering to me all along. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. For years, I had accepted crumbs of love out of fear of being alone. But being alone, I realized, was far better than being surrounded by those who only saw your worth through what you gave them. As I sat there, preparing for my journey, I no longer felt like a lonely, forgotten woman. I felt powerful, unburdened, and alive. St. Thomas was waiting, the sea breeze calling my name. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was free. I was Marion, reborn in her own light.